Hello viewers, welcome to the Fourth Apple. This is Akmal Makhdum. Today at Fourth Apple, we have another distinguished guest. The distinguished guest today is Professor Russell Razzaque. Professor Razzaque is a London-based psychiatrist of almost 25 years of experience, a distinguished researcher, and he's also director of research for his mental health trust. He's also looking at an open dialogue study which he's leading, which is to transform services for mental health in England. So today we will be talking with Russell about his own aspirations, his own role in the Royal College of Psychiatrists, his general role in psychiatry in England and Wales, and his own aspiration. What is it that he aims to do? And is he a happy psychiatrist? Because nowadays, psychiatrists are feeling a great deal of stress. So welcome, Russell. Thank you very much for coming. But the important thing is that you are far away and you're joining us on video link. Grateful for that.
Hello, welcome to the world. As you know, we talk about different things in a different manner, in a candid manner, and do some lateral thinking. Today we have a psychiatrist of national repute, Professor Russell Razzaque. He is a designer of innovative mental health models. He's standing for the presidency of the Royal College of Psychiatrists and be the #1 psychiatrist in the country. The #1 psychiatrist actually in the world for the English-speaking world, those who are affiliated with the college. And he's also a consultant psychiatrist, obviously. Being an academic, working in London, he's got his eye on broad aspects of research and service delivery. So welcome, Russell Razzaque.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay. As I said, this discussion is going to be candid. And in your candor, would you tell us how are you going to make the Royal College of Psychiatrists relevant to ethnic minority psychiatrists?
Yeah, sure. I think the college has a long way to go in terms of really integrating into our frontline psychiatrists across the country, our frontline services, and also particularly ethnic minority psychiatrists. There's a lot of disconnection, really, between the college and frontline clinicians, and particularly colleagues from ethnic minorities. I think it's the first thing is it's essential for the college to link to the different regions of the country. We have a college council that sits in London. I think it needs to come out to have different regional councils meetings across the year. I also think we need to have the international colleagues. We have an international kind of division of college that needs to come into the council, so the integrated message that's very clear. I also think that the diaspora groups that we have within the college need to have more representation at the council and at senior levels of the college. I think we need to be more integrated. We have some amazing diaspora groups like the British Pakistani Psychiatric Association and BIPA, Indian Psychiatric Association, as well as Sri Lankan and Bangladeshi. I think bringing them in a lot closer to the college so they have relevant roles, so that their leadership becomes represented on the college leadership and its executive structures will be essential. So I think there's a number of ways in which we can make this integration happen. I think it needs to be a priority for the college because there are so many colleagues who fit into this category, and so many of these colleagues give so much to the college in terms of research, in terms of activity within the college. I think it's about time, really, the college became more proactive in connecting with our communities. And I believe that can happen, but it does need to start with a real initiative from the top. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. But obviously, you've been talking about this for a very long time. And of course, recent initiatives about 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, which opened up the college a little more. And obviously, we have a large number of organizations getting involved in various committees and all that. But still, the relevance isn't there. Any tangible steps that you are able to enumerate is 1, 2, 3 that you will do in the first year of your tenure if elected?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is that incorporating, let's say, the leadership of diaspora groups as well as international division into the college leadership, so they become a part of college council, that'll be key. The other thing is we often have, for example, South Asian History Month. At the moment, this is fairly sort of like open-ended occasional meetings, but actually making that where we actually have conferences, we bring together colleagues from diaspora groups to be part of what we do in the college. So I think that will be essential. So having the college organise more events for diaspora groups will be key. And then also having a representation onto the college council and leadership positions, specifically for diaspora and ethnic minority groups and international groupings as well. I think that will be essential. So by the end of the first year, hopefully there'll be more of those specific positions of representation, and then there'll be more events that we have that are specifically to bring in colleagues.
So what you're suggesting is that in the council, you will create or you will recommend that the college creates de facto or positions where there are British, Pakistani, Indian, Sri Lankan, all those established organizations with a critical mass, which recognized by the college will automatically sit in the council. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, so there's a diaspora grouping that exists within the college. So to increase the status of that diaspora grouping, which feeds in from all of those diaspora groups, and then they have an actual place in the council, as well as the diaspora group, but also there's the international members who are outside the UK, and them having a position on the council as well. So a couple of extra council positions are specified for these groups.
Well, thank you very much for that. That is, a very clear and tangible step. We will welcome that if that happens. A second thing that I wanted to ask you is that once upon a time, the college and the dean of the college had the authority to remove accreditation for training from a particular hospital or a particular trust because they weren't giving the trainee appropriate opportunities or appropriate facilities, and so on. That authority has obviously been removed, as you understand, with the health education. So, what is your plan to reinforce colleges' view on training in a particular trust? Because there could be trusts which are lagging behind and are not, doing appropriate, making appropriate efforts for the trainees. So is the college going to think about that, reaffirming its position with the employer?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I remember actually the days when the college had that authority, and I also remember I was training in the Midlands at the time when there were trusts that had that accreditation removed, which had a major effect on the trust. I mean, clearly it was not something they wanted, but it enabled us to make sure that they raised their standards significantly. It just wasn't good enough trainees, and that did happen as a result. So you're absolutely right. Those days when we had those powers was something that really benefited trainees and enabled us to make sure that training schemes were appropriately organized. Now, unfortunately, this is sort of coming through a national scheme with education, and all of these things are in flux all the time right now because HEE is now merging with NHS England. So there is some scope as this change is happening. I also think there's scope because we have an election this year in the UK, so therefore we can influence the manifestos of the political parties. This is a time when you can make policy happen. And so things like this, I think, are essential. And I agree absolutely with what you say, in that the college should certainly have more say, both in kind of approving any decisions that are made around individual colleges or certainly around trusts, but initiating that too. So I agree absolutely. The college should have a role in being able to say, well, actually, we find that this particular trust or area is, or ICB as they are now, is not really living up to the standards needed for training. And as a result, we should be able to work with NHSE, as they will be, because HE will measure them, to start to do something about de-accrediting them. So I think that we have this is one of the reasons I'm running for president now. Actually, I think we have a unique opportunity in history to make some changes, because systems are in flux. NHS systems are in flux. There's an election underway. Political systems are in flux. Power is in flux. So we can really put some influence in. And I think what you described there is a key area for us to influence, our ability to actually, hold trust to account, to make sure that they are delivering training that's of a sufficient quality for people, and not just getting them to do menial work and sort of fill the numbers up. So yeah, I think this is we do have an opportunity to do that, and I would absolutely push for that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is also extremely encouraging that you feel that the authority that the college had once in a formal manner, because it meant that if college moved accreditation, the trainee would be removed and the trust would lose that employee and that expertise, and would be shamed for not doing enough and having that training removed. So what you're suggesting is that there are two opportunities: one through looking at the legislation and looking at reforming the old structure which isn't working, and then reaffirming the college. And that doesn't happen. The college, moral authority, by its professional authority, by its sheer position, can do that on its own, because there is no organization in England which would be able to sustain that degree of criticism if the college feels that that is appropriate, whether the college has or not to remove, but at least can make a declaration about it if reported. Yeah. So is that something that you're suggesting?
Yeah, I agree. And it is on exactly those two levels. The college has a voice, has quite a powerful voice, in that good access to the media, good connections across all policy-making systems. So I think the college has a voice that it can use for this purpose. I also think, given the political fluidity of our current situation, this is an opportunity for us to formalize our role more, and our ability to have an influence on all of these levels, I think, can change within the next 3 years. So yeah, I'm very hopeful that if we ask for the right things at the right time, if we're strategic about the way we respond to each of these. For example, you're aware, of course, that some scandalous documentaries, Panorama, Dispatches, and there will be an inquiry, there will be a commission that comes out as a result of this. This again is an opportunity for us to say, actually, if training isn't delivered sufficiently for people, then this is some of the reasons this happens. And also the kind of things I've been campaigning on, like lack of continuity of care that you sometimes see, and also in trainee jobs, the difficulty of maintaining relationships long term. All of these things contribute to care being substandard. So I think this is our opportunity to change all these things as a result of some of the crises that have emerged, as well as the political fluidity that we're now going forward.
Well, thank you very much. My third question will be a little more discussive, I guess. As you are aware, that the General Medical Council has had some bad press, and some judicial and tribunal decisions have come out in which they've suggested that GMC may be working on some racial grounds. And the statistics have suggested that there is a ratio of 1 to 7 between ethnic minority and non-ethnic minority penalization of candidates. And of course, you're aware that ethnic minority doctors and now other non-minority doctors have committed suicide, have been, the family lives have been destroyed, and basically reputations, and basically in many cases they weren't really guilty, or the punishment of just being referred and all that it entailed, and the suspensions that were inevitable, have actually caused people to have heart attacks and die and even commit suicide, and families devastated. Now, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, we can discuss this more broadly. I think that there has been a problem with racial prejudice within the NHS, and the tragedy is that it's been long-standing, right? So, and this is reflected in complaints that come in. It's reflected in investigations that happen, but it's also reflected in just the experience of frontline colleagues. So, there was a survey that was published earlier this year that ethnic minority doctors described very large proportions of us who experience racism on a consistent basis. So it's very disappointing to see this. My dad came to the UK as a psychiatrist in the 1960s, and he experienced significant racism then. His hope was that in my generation this would have gone by then, but it's certainly not the case. And surveys show us that that's consistently not the case. An academic colleague of mine, about a couple of decades ago, did a piece of research in which he sent in two CVs for the same exactly the same CVs for a range of jobs across the country. One had the surname Smith and one had the surname Ali. And Ali got half as many interviews as Smith, even though the CVs were identical. And the response to that at the time is that BMA actually wanted to take him to court for fraud. Technically, these people didn't exist. So instead of responding to that, they ended up trying to take him to court for fraud. He won in the end, and of course, there was some response to that. But things haven't changed that much. That degree of prejudice, a degree of prejudice, does remain across our systems. And what you describe in terms of the referral to GMC and the complaints procedure is a product of that. Right? It's a product of the wider scale racial prejudice that exists within the NHS. And I think that what we really need to get to a stage where we call these things out openly and consistently, and we don't. So, for example, there are so many inpatient nurses who experience racism every day in their jobs, overtly, and they think that's part of their jobs. They've just become acclimatized to it. So I think we really need to have a concerted effort across the professions in terms of changing the culture. It's a little bit of a shallow analogy, but like happened in football and other places where minority players were getting abused. So we also need to have a similar campaign, a national campaign around this. Again, the college has a voice, in the media. I think we need to be able to campaign around the experience that ethnic minority doctors have, come together with other Royal Colleges, the wider medical profession, as well as other professions, to campaign around this. In terms of when these referrals come in, I think that we need to be really clear that there needs to be audits around different minority groupings and how they experience the referrals process and what happens. Because without doubt, there's a great exaggeration in certain ethnic minorities. And I also think what we also need to do, and something we've discussed before, is that the college needs to be actively involved in these things too. So if there's a complaint about a psychiatrist, then the Royal College should be very key in that process, and they shouldn't be making decisions without the Royal College of Psychiatry being able to say, Royal College of Psychiatrists, that actually, yes, this is appropriate or this isn't appropriate. And having those people, as I say, if we have a college leadership that's more representative and connected and integrated with diaspora, ethnic minority leaderships, international leaderships, then hopefully we'll have a more balanced way of being able to judge and decide on these things. So I think making that an integral part of the process is also key. Having the representatives that we have in the GMC listen to us on these issues will be key. So on many levels, on the basic social level, a basic NHS culture level, I think we need to be able to make some moves on that and change the culture and have explicit campaigns around this. On the on the wider, more specific level of the as I say, of the referrals into the GMC, we also need to be able to have a say in that, to be able to make the process fairer and more involving of a wider group of colleagues rather than a small group, which are not necessarily able to make the decisions that everyone considers to be fair.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying is that there are at least 4 aspects to it. There is the national aspect in terms of media, in terms of colleges' role for education, for awareness, and sensitizing the population and the establishment in Britain that this is what is going on. And it has been going on for decades. And very little has changed, because there seems to be some intransigence, and there seems to be a lot of inertia in terms of bringing GMC change, its culture and its approach. It has, moved pieces here or there, but, the result is the same. So this is one, and I understand, and please do not let me put words in your mouth. So if you haven't said it, please stop me. But the way I'm understanding is that the second thing what you're saying is that with the employer, and the Royal College needs to engage with the employer, and the third is that the college is interested in working with the trainee and or the doctor or the psychiatrist to make them more prepared or more robust, because I understand that college has a little support group. But then the key aspect that I think you and I have discussed before, and is that Royal College taking on the responsibility and the mantle of having an opinion on any psychiatrist who's referred to the GMC. And looking at the process, looking at the appropriate, it may or may not, it will definitely not be part of the GMC process, but it'll be an independent professional process for its member, for its constituent. And that constituent invariably becomes a patient when he's thinking of committing suicide or his family is devastated. So there are two roles of college over there. So I'm just trying to understand the more tangible and more practical aspects. Yeah. Is that what we are talking in terms of, as I said, it's a discussive question? Do you think that's the idea?
You've identified correctly sort of several different levels that I'm talking about, bringing about change in. And as you say, the GMC's process is the GMC's process, but the college being involved also, having a role and also influencing the GMC's process in terms of making our position clear on what's happening. But also, as I say, the organizational level is important. The wider societal NHS level is important, where we message and signal and give clear evidence about the experience that doctors are having. But the organizational level in the middle of that is also key, because historically the college has always floated slightly detached from actual organizations, from trusts. Right? There hasn't been that much integration between the two, which doesn't make for a very influential body. Right. So this has begun to change a little bit recently with the College Engagement Network, and I'm in that network, where the college, and I'm an associate medical director in my trust, and part of that role now is to link up with the college. The college is linking up with associate medical directors, medical directors, and clinical directors across the country to form a network. It's very nascent. It's just beginning. We meet once a month. But this needs to be expanded. We need to move towards having regional offices of the college. We need to move towards having real integration with medical and service directors, so that over time, the college is able to have a constructive loop of feedback, of influence, of connection, places where we can share, we can learn from each other. And this will allow us to have influence across all of these issues. And where we're talking about the experience of ethnic minority doctors, then it will go from being an abstract theoretical response of the college to a direct one that's involved in the actual situation on the ground. So I think our integration with the trust on the ground is vital for many, many reasons. This is one reason, and of course more widely in terms of how we design our services, how we improve care for our patients, how we maximize the role of the psychiatrist and bring back a holistic role for psychiatrists. All of these things can only happen if the college has this lot stronger integration with the front line and with trust on the ground. So that you've identified correctly, there's multiple levels: GMC, actual level of the process itself, the level of the organization, which is key and needs a lot more work, and then the wider societal NHS culture level. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I now have a series of tasks set out for all of these levels in each of these areas. Yeah, very much.
No, it's extremely heartening and refreshing that we are discussing quite revolutionary ideas in terms of college taking a far more proactive role, far more morally supervisory role, and far more critical role, rather than being a detached little club that meets every now and then and distributes these little letters to favorites and so on. So I think that is very important. And obviously, college consists of its members, and its members are the ones who face the music, whether it is death during COVID or suicide before the GMC. So I think that is what needs to be concerning the college rather than staying away and washing its hands off. Because otherwise, as we started talking, that there is no real relevance of the college. If it is CPD, it is available everywhere.
Yeah, and that's very true. And if you look at colleagues across the country, turnout at elections is very small. I tell people, if you vote, you like voting for 5 people because only about 20-30% of people vote. Most people don't vote. So the relevance of the college in people's everyday lives in terms of our working lives is very, very limited. And it shouldn't be that way in psychiatry. I mean, say the Royal College of Physicians, I accept they have dermatologists, they have cardiologists, they have people with very diverse jobs and nothing in common. But psychiatrists have a lot in common with each other, So we have a lot of connection with each other. Therefore, the college can have a strong voice in the whole of mental health services. And we don't have that. It's relatively content with having a sort of very much a background position and unfortunately, a small group of people involved in the college and then recycling around the college committees. So this is why I've sort of come in really with a genuine agenda of change. I think there's so much that needs to change. We talk about, for example, the extent to which bureaucracy has overwhelmed colleges across the country, where it can easily take 2 hours to input an assessment compared to 1 hour to do the assessment. So you spend twice as long recording information than actually seeing patients. And all of this has come through wave after wave of key performance indicators. And all of these things have been oblivious to the clinical importance of spending time with patients and taking our time away. So clinical leadership at a trust level, it does what they can. I do what I can. But you can't do this without a national conversation about these things, which is why I think the college really needs to come into the fore on those things and be a major driver in terms of national change. So that for me, I really feel the college, we have 300 employees. It's a very large organization. I don't ever think the force of the college has been used enough. So I'm very passionate, keen about turning the college into a force for change. And I believe it genuinely can be if we really use the resources we have. And that's why I got into this in the first place. I just felt we're not using the college in the way that we can to really improve things for our patients and for our colleagues. And that's very much what I'd like to see going forward.